What's your lemonade stand story?
And he was like, YouTube's going to be the next big thing, Devin. Like, you need to get on that. You need to get on it early. And I'm like,
And all of us, we all go through our own trials, our own level of stuff.
Sure hope this works out. Otherwise, this will be a huge waste of time.
I mean, what else is it all about other than just taking risks and continuing to try and grow and hopefully get better and better at making things?
Most of the billion-dollar brands you've seen were started by people that were just solving a problem for themselves.
We're telling lemonade stand stories from some of the world's top creators, makers, and go-getters.
We're rolling right now.
Hey, roll.
We're having fun. We're rolling.
Yeah.
Hey guys, this podcast today is sponsored by Yalla, a task management and team collaboration software that we use at Lemonade Stand. We use Yalla to keep all of our team members organized, wherever they are. In fact, we used it to plan and organize this podcast. Visit yalla.team, that's YALLA.team, and try it for free. We also have a special offer for all listeners of this podcast. Use promo code LEMONADE and get a lifetime 25% off if you upgrade. Hey guys, this is Charanarama Prabhakar and welcome to the Lemonade Stand Podcast. I am here with my good buddy Sebastian Serrano. And Sebastian, it's very cool how we met. I was on the court playing tennis one day, and you know, I'm super duper average, I would say, as a player. But while I was playing, I saw this guy, this handsome devil, just serving so hard and so fast and always getting it in. I was like, who is this guy? And I just want to watch him and have him coach me. And turns out that's Sebastian. So he's a former ATP player. Played on the Pro Tour for a little while. Became level 400 in the world at one point, and went on to become a official tennis coach, and has coached a lot of different people from all around the world, really. You were in LA for a bit, now you're currently in Utah, and then you are also having aspirations of creating your own tennis academy. Is that right?
Yep.
That's awesome, man. Well, I'm going to reposition myself just to get as comfortable as I can. But Sebastian, I want to thank you for being on this podcast. I'm really excited to hear about your journey, and I've got a couple of really fun questions for you. Now, this is not the typical podcast because most of the people I interview are business entrepreneurs that have started startup businesses or are directors or producers or things like that. But I really haven't had the opportunity to interview an athlete, a professional athlete. So this has been awesome. So thank you. Thank you for humoring me and being on this podcast.
No, thank you, man. Like you said, we met at a tennis court, and we were just having fun there. And one of those things, right? We started talking, and and here we are.
Here we are, just sitting down and having a conversation. Well, I'd love to first talk a little bit about your history. So you're from Colombia originally, right? So how did you get into tennis, and can you kind of walk us down that path for a bit?
Yeah, so I always played tennis. I don't remember not playing tennis.
Yeah.
I always liked sports, all kind of sports. My dad was a soccer player. I liked soccer a lot, but I don't know. I just picked up the racket and I just loved it, and I just started playing. It was like a tennis club in Colombia, and that's what we would do with my family. We'd just go to a club, play tennis, and hang out. Yeah. So always played. Yeah.
You always played. And it was one of those things where your parents didn't have to force you to do it or anything. It was just no, I really like doing this.
Yeah,
So.
I really liked it. I like soccer as well. At some point, I reached to a point where I had to decide which one, and I chose tennis. I was better at tennis, so that's what I did.
That's awesome. How did you know that you're at what point did you realize, hey, you know what, I think I'm actually pretty decent at this sport?
Well, when I was 12, I was already the best one in my city, in Cartagena.
Oh, cool.
In my age group. And I liked it, but only when I was 14 that I went to a national event. At that point I moved from Cartagena to another city, to Bucaramanga, to practice. And I remember that first national event where I actually did good, because before I was the best in my city, but not really good in the national tournaments. And that tournament, that was the first one. I was 14 and I reached the semifinals. And and since then, since I was 14, I was like, okay, I'm pretty good. I mean, I didn't think I was good, but when I look back, I'm like I was always in the top 5 in my country.
In your country.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's amazing, man. I don't even know if I'd ever be the top 5 in my house, and there's not even 5 of us there, so it's great. That's awesome, man. So you did that, and it really kind of built your confidence. And so, at what point did you go from just playing in these like local tournaments and then national tournaments to, hey, I want to get on the pro tour?
Mm-hmm. So when I later, like 15, 16, all these kids were talking about these other tournaments. Like if you were good enough in your country, then you could go play outside, like Brazil. And there was this circuit of tournaments called the COSAT circuit. And I really wanted to be there, and then I needed to be even better than the ranking I had, and I worked for that one, and then I ended up going to this circuit of tournaments. Then after that, I come to college. I got a scholarship at East Tennessee State University. It's not the biggest school, but we were like top 30 in the nation. And I did pretty well in college. I was like 1 match away to become an All-American.
Wow.
And I think I never made it, because I never made the All-American thing, because I actually didn't know if that was a big thing.
Sure.
I was like...
Yeah.
But now when I look back, I remember I was 1 match away, and we're so close to win that one. It was a doubles match. And then I'm done with college, and I'm like, I mean, I did well. And I remember in college, I was beating most of the kids that were doing better than me before. So I'm like, I'm improving a lot. I improve a lot here in college. Maybe I should try the professional thing. And that's when I decided after college to play professionally.
That's just amazing. I mean, it's great that you like had that experience where you're like, okay, yeah, I want to go for this. I want to try professionally. I don't think I could ever say, yeah, I think I'm ready to be a professional tennis player. So it's amazing that you had that experience. And so you did it's the ATP tour, is that correct?
Yeah. It sounds like an easy thing when you say like, oh, I want to be professional, but it wasn't actually that easy. You know how it is when you're gonna take a big decision and you don't really know where you're stepping into. You see these guys on TV, you know, like, oh, amazing, like Federer, Rafa. Yeah. But the reality is like, you know, the ones that are trying to get there are grinding. We call it that, right? The grind. And I really didn't know it was that hard. I remember that when I started, I thought like, you know, college was great. They give you everything. I mean, any athlete who play college tennis at a decent Division 1, they know they give you shoes, clothes, rackets, travel. You don't have to worry for anything. You just go play. And then I was like, well, college was like this, then professional is probably even better. Oh yeah,
they're gonna give me professional clothes. Yeah,
exactly. And then you go, and I remember first week thinking like, okay, so who's my coach? Do I have a coach? Yeah. You have to go find the coach.
Wow.
And you're on your own. It's an individual sport. So that's what I learned the most from tennis. Like you build a character. Yeah. You know, you understand that whatever you want to accomplish in life, it depends on you. I don't know how it is for a football player out there. You know, they belong to
a team,
to huge teams, right. And in my mind, it sounds like it might be easier because I lived the other route, but I'm sure they went through a lot of struggles as well.
I'm sure, yeah. But it's so interesting because you've kind of had to create your own path for yourself, right? And that is very true. It's like it is a very individual sport, so it's like you have to find the right coach for you. You have to find the right type of training regimen for you, right? And from what I gather, you're kind of paying your own way. Is that right?
Yeah.
That's a very expensive professional sport to get into.
Exactly, yeah. Like I said, I didn't know what I was jumping into. And I always did things like that in my life. Like I just felt it was right. It was like what I wanted to do.
Sure.
Why do I have to, find a job like every other people, and just follow that? And I knew it was gonna be hard, but yeah, I mean, I don't regret it. I just jumped in and did it, and like I found a coach. And I was training with that guy, and then we were playing tournaments, and then as you go, you're learning other things, and it's a journey, and just like life, you don't know what's next,
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because what you're saying, it sounds very much like just like an entrepreneur, right? They didn't want to go down the path that was already laid for them, that other people have like paved the way for. They're like, all right, well, I want to kind of blaze my own trails. I want to see what that looks like. And yes, it was a lot of hard work, but it's also incredibly rewarding, right? Would you say to go down a path where you're actively creating it every day? How did that feel for you every day, like kind of waking up and doing your thing?
Yeah, you said the word. It's creative. It's like every day it's kind of like a new thing that you're creating. So I started like playing tournaments, and it was a new adventure. Like I will go to a tournament. I remember the first tournaments. Actually, even before I started, I remember I got injured.
Right.
Like I did a preseason, I was ready to go, and then I break my knee.
Oh my god.
And I'm like, okay.
And that's not a good idea, right? To break your knee if you're gonna go play, right?
Exactly.
Oh, man.
So again, I'm trying to figure out. Okay, I gotta fix this, and yeah, then I fix it, and luckily enough, like 2 tournaments after, or 3, after I recover, I remember I made a semifinals in a future. That put me like in the 700s or something like that, and then it was like a big thing because it changed my mentality. At the beginning, I was more doing it like let's see what happens,
right?
Or this is gonna be fun. It's gonna be a year. I was just thinking a year of traveling and get to see the world or something, and then I was thinking, wow, like I'm 700 in the world. Maybe I can be like one of these guys, one of these amazing players you see on TV or something. And but it sounds like a complicated thing that you have to figure out and something like that. But at the end of the day, it's like you wake up, you just do the best you have, whatever that means. Maybe if you're injured, it's just putting ice. Yeah. And that's the best you can do that day. Yeah. And if you're healthy, then you just go and train as hard as you can, and you trust the guy that's coaching you. And then if it's tournament day, you just go out there and just give it all. Yeah. And that's the way I think. Like when you know you're giving your all, something good has to come out from it.
I love that thought, that principle of like, you can't control your outcomes, really, right? I mean, you have no idea what's going to really happen, and you have expectations, but at the end of the day, all you can really do is give it your best. Go out there, give it your best, and work hard, and then let the outcomes kind of take care of itself. Right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. If you are doing all this because it's gonna give you a lot of money, or if you're gonna like be on TV, I mean, you're not doing the right thing. You just gotta do your best and be happy with whatever comes out from it. It's like kind of like faith, like like if you have faith, you cannot have faith because okay, I'm gonna be faithful because I want to have a baby. Right. No, you're faithful because that's the right thing to do.
It's the right thing to do.
You gotta trust that God is in control and He wants the best for you. Yeah. No matter what.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful place to get to, right? When you can kind of let go of like, I'm doing this because of this and this and this, and you let go of all those things. You say, hey, I'm doing this because it's just the right thing to do. It just feels good, and then whatever happens is the result of it. So now I have not really had the chance to kind of dive into the questions I'm about to do with you to other people because they haven't really played sports, but because you are a professional athlete, I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about this because I really do believe that there's a lot of sports analogies that can really apply to life. And if you have the opportunity to just experience sports a certain way, you can kind of experience life a certain way, right? So the question I was going to ask you is actually regarding playing authentically, right? Now, when you watch players like Rafa Nadal and Roger Federer or Novak Djokovic, and for those of you that aren't huge tennis followers, like those are like the top 3 or 4 in the world right now, they all have certain fundamentals that are true and tried, but they all have their own unique style. Yeah. And when I watch you play, I'm like, wow, Sebastian's got his own unique style. And everyone's style is a little bit different than everyone else's. You know, you can try mimicking, but at the end of the day, you have to have your own kind of style. So how did you find your style? Or how did you find what was authentic to you?
Yeah. You get to know yourself as you play.
Okay.
And for me, I remember when I got out of college, I was more of a grinder. Like I would stay in the baseline. I would hit a lot of balls, kind of wait for the other one to make the error. But then you play in the professional tour, and it's like it's way harder. And,
sure.
And all players talk to each other, and they are like, okay, this guy play like this or like that.
So I have to hit a certain way.
And then they know how to beat you. And that happens a lot to a lot of college players. Then jump in the tour, they do well the first 2-3 tournaments, then they figure them out, and then they can't win anymore. And that's exactly what happened to me. Next time I did a semifinals was like 5 years later.
Okay, wow, yeah.
and then you learn you have to, just like life, right? You gotta get good at everything. You cannot just depend on staying in the baseline and be a grinder. Then you gotta learn how to, have a big serve, come up to the net, change it up with slices, hit high balls, hit angles, mentally strong in different ways. Because you can kind of be the mental strong guy, a Rafa guy that's super intense, and you can also be the mental strong guy, Federer, that seems like so relaxed.
Yeah, and it's so interesting, like their approaches, right? Like when you look at like a Rafa Nadal, like he hits the ball like so hard every single time, and Federer may not hit as hard as he does, but he's got all these like really interesting like techniques where he can go from the baseline to the front, and then he's got like these certain techniques and just like destroys people's games, right? Well, and I've also noticed like even the way they swing the racket is a little bit different, from player to player to player. So how did you find the swing that works for you?
Yeah. So it has a lot to be, it's related to your personality, to your anatomy in your body. Some guys are more stiff than others. Federer, I'm sure, is like way looser than Rafa.
Yeah.
And so you got to know yourself. You got to know what's your strength. For me, like I was saying in college, I was like the strong player from the baseline. So that was my base.
Yeah, you would start there.
Exactly. That would be my thing. Like I could always go back to that. Like I could just grind it out and be annoying and be so like a fighter and get in the other guy's head.
Yeah. You're the guy that's like, I won't ever miss the shot. I'll stay back here all the time and be consistent. So then they'll try something, they might get it out, and then you get the point.
Exactly,
right?
Exactly.
Cool.
Exactly. I'm just gonna hit one more ball back than you. I'm just gonna hit it back again.
Yeah.
And that was my base. But after I became more of a complete player. Like especially in my service game where you have to be more aggressive, I started like being way more aggressive, like especially with my forehand. I realized like I could be so loose with my forehand, with my wrist, and just create like a whip, and I had like a deadly forehand kind of thing. I mean,
I've experienced it. I know it's very scary,
Yeah. It's maybe like life, you have an opportunity, you gotta take it. Tennis becomes more and more like that as you get better and better, and it becomes a matter of like who takes control of the point first. So you really have to develop a weapon where you know that if you're comfortable, that ball is not coming back, or at least you're gonna make the other guy be on his heels until he comes out with a crazy shot that he can go back to neutral or something. So I develop a forehand weapon that I can send the guys.
Yeah, packing home. You know?
Yeah, and that was my weapon. So grinder, fighter, good legs. I could run a lot. Like I could last long in matches. The matches, the longer the match will go, the better for me.
Oh wow, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And
because your endurance was just so much longer and stronger than your opponent.
Yeah. And I actually I like training. I train a lot, super hard, and I think that's also what why I had injuries.
Yeah.
And yeah.
No, that's great, and one of the things I liked is one of the first things you said is like when you play tennis, you really come to know yourself, right? And I think it's super important to know your strengths and to know your weaknesses and to say, okay, just like in life, like the more you know your strengths, you're like, okay, this is where I feel comfortable in, this is my circle, and then I can expand and I can get bigger and bigger and bigger, but I will always have my base. And for you, it was always like being in the baseline, hitting the grinders. So that's awesome. Now, another thing with tennis is it's a very mental game, right? And I know for me, a lot of times I get in my own head, not just with tennis, but in life, right? I'm like, oh man, should I do this or should I not do that? And my psyche, my thoughts kind of like get it, so I can't even move forward sometimes. Have you ever had instances when you were playing tennis where your own thoughts kind of messed you up?
Yeah, and it's kind of annoying.
Yeah, for sure.
You're always thinking stuff, and as you were talking, I remember that so many times, let's say you're gonna hit a backhand and you're thinking I'm going cross, and then all of a sudden you doubt. Yeah. And you were like, oh no, let's go down the line, and then the shot goes to the middle. It's kind of amazing. You doubt, and then you don't go cross. You don't go down the line. You go to the middle. Sure. And that's like easy one for them. And I learned that you shouldn't doubt. You shouldn't doubt. You should do whatever it's flowing at that moment. It's the right decision. Yeah. And now that I retired, I found it's related to life. Like deep inside what you gotta do. Yeah. And when you doubt, you kind of do something okay, but it's not great.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you kind of like go against your spirit. You go against your instincts, And it's interesting because like your instincts and your spirit at the very moment can be like, this is it. This is what I got to do. And then all of a sudden your mind suddenly comes in. It's like, but is it really, And I love like how tennis is such an in-the-moment sport, right? You can't really be, it's not like chess. You can't be like thinking like 5-6 steps ahead. It's like, hey, you know what? Like, this is where it's at. I got to go for here. Yeah. So have you ever had it where your own thoughts kind of block you from your own progress, even when you're training?
Definitely. It's funny. When I look back, I wish I would have taken it easier.
Oh, okay. Really?
Yeah, because I was I always thought that the only way to make it was just
hardcore
hard, yeah, train hard, and I think that's why I got so many injuries. I think I didn't put into the equation, the fact that when you're a tennis player, I think I was doing it like in college, that I didn't have to worry about traveling or about hotels. Sure. And that took a piece of my mind. So I was training even harder than in college, and then I had to deal with all these, find a coach, find a hotel, all these things. And I think that's why I overtrained, and I had injuries that slowed me down. And I remember having a friend that I don't think he was as talented as me, but he kind of he had the personality of like I don't care so much,
Yeah.
and he didn't have the injuries I had, and he made it farther.
That's so interesting, man. I mean, I remember, I think there was an interview I saw of Roger Federer, and I think like his 2016 year wasn't a very good year, or like he had injuries and stuff, and he ended up like taking like 6 months off, where everyone else was training and stuff, and he like just took off time for recovery and all that stuff. And then he came back in 2017 and he just destroyed everybody, you know? And it was just an interesting thing of like, hey, sometimes you just need that break, you know? You need a break to kind of relax and not be so hard on yourself, I guess.
Exactly, like I said at the beginning, like you gotta give it your best, whatever that best means.
Sure.
So, in order to know that what it means, you gotta know yourself. You gotta know, okay, maybe the best these days kind of not training 4 hours, but 2 or an hour and a half, and that's how I did it towards the end of my career. So I wish I would have done it like that since the beginning. Like I felt like I learned.
Yeah.
But later. Later.
And see, I need more of that. Like sometimes I'm like, the best I can do today is eat a dozen donuts. So I'm gonna go do that. I'm just kidding. No, it's great, man. I love that you are listening to your spirit and what it's telling you to do. So there's 2 more things I'd like to talk about. When you are playing tennis, we talked about this earlier, how sometimes you get into what's called the flow state, right? Where you're just so connected to everything. It's almost like, I don't know if this happens to you, but it's like the audience disappears and all that matters is the ball, right? So can you talk to me a little bit about the flow state? Like how does it feel when you're in there, and what happens to you and all that stuff?
Yeah, as you were talking, I was thinking about this video game when I was little. It was called like Max Payne.
Okay.
It was like a guy shooting.
Okay.
And you could press a button and then put everything in slow motion.
Okay.
And then you could, have so much time to look at that guy
and be like,
kill him.
Yeah.
And then look at the other side.
Yeah.
Kill that guy.
Yeah.
And it was like everything was slow motion. It was easy.
Yeah.
I think that's the best way I can describe it.
Really?
It was like you could tell the other guy was like having such a hard time. Like for him, everything was happening in fast forward. Yeah. For me, it was like slow motion. Like,
really?
There's no way I'm gonna lose today.
That's crazy.
It's like, well, I mean, you could lose.
Yeah.
But it was more like you were just one with the racket, with the ball, with the court, with the audience, with everything that was around you. It was like everything was meant to be there at that moment, at that time. It was like a relaxed stage.
Did you feel like a sense of euphoria? Did you feel like excited when that moment happened, or because I've had those moments as well. Like I have had it a little bit with tennis. I've had it a lot with snowboarding because I snowboard as well, and or acting. You know, I'm an actor, and sometimes you're just like so connected in the moment that you're like, you're not ever thinking about your lines. You're not thinking. That's what it is. You're not thinking. You're just there. You're being present. How hard is it to get into that state?
It's funny. That question is funny because the way to get there is
not think about it, right?
Is exactly. It's not thinking about it.
Yeah.
It's not like something you force. Like it's hard. It just happens. But I feel like the best way to get there is with preparation.
Okay.
Like with the things you did before, that you prepare, you're in good shape. You've been working your technique or whatever. You know the opponent you're playing. You feel ready for that battle, and then when you jump in there, you know that the only thing you gotta do is just try your best. Just try your best and trust that all the other things are gonna happen. So yeah, you don't really put an effort in the moment. You just put effort before.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful thing, right? It's like the more you prepare, when you actually get there, you're like, hey, I'm just ready to shine, you know? And it's a beautiful thing, like, to experience it and to have, you know, an athlete experience flow, an actor experience flow, where, yeah, you just kind of feel your best, you do your best. You could still lose, like you said, but it wasn't even about that. It's almost as if, I know for me, it's almost like just being in the flow state is its own reward, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like another example I can give is like if it was not your body playing, it was more like your spirit playing.
Oh, I like
Like
that.
you're in your spirit playing.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it does. I think it does, because it's like you're not thinking about body mechanics and things like that. It's almost like you said, you're connected to everything. It's like the most natural thing in the world to hit this ball over the net and stuff. Yeah, it's a beautiful state. So that's awesome that you experienced that. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk a little bit about is what we were discussing about how to get back up again after we've fallen. And you've had some experience with this.
Exactly. Where I want to go with this, good example in my life were my injuries. So many times I have 4 surgeries on me. So 2 on my knee, 1 here sports hernia, and 1 on my hand. And there were moments where, you know, when I was injured and I was, you know, maybe I should stop here. You know, why would I keep going? I cannot even walk now. And sometimes, like one of my injuries, I remember it happened in Germany. And I had no one there. I didn't know anybody. Went to a doctor, had the surgery. I remember I had to. This doctor was, I mean, she was like so good that you could, after the surgery, you didn't even have to stay in the hospital, kind of.
Okay.
Because the recovery was so fast. That was her advertising or something like
okay.
that. You
Her
could be back
advertisement.
on the court in after 7 days or something like that.
Okay.
And I didn't want to like spend more money or whatever in the hospital. So I said okay, and I walked back to my hotel that day.
After the surgery.
After the surgery.
Oh my gosh.
And I remember taking the train in Germany, and I was walking like so slow. This one was my sports hernia injury, and that was a sad moment in my life. And yeah, and I remember thinking, do I wanna like go back? But at that time, I felt like that was the right thing to do. That I still had something in me telling me to try it.
To keep playing tennis.
To keep playing tennis. And yeah, and like just like that doctor said, I remember 10 days later or something, I was like running around the track. Couldn't believe it. Like I had surgery 10 days before. And yeah, I mean, those are experiences, you know, the life humbles you. You know that when you play at a high level, I'm sure every athlete who play at a very high level had some kind of injuries.
Sure.
And yeah, and you fall down and you just gotta get back up to your feet.
Well, it's so interesting because sometimes when life hits you down and like knocks you down and makes you feel like there is no hope, there is nothing left. It's like, all right, I'm good. I'll stay down. You know, I won't get back up. But I mean, can you imagine what would have happened in your life if you never went and played tennis again? You know, like what would have happened? You know, and
yeah, I feel like right now, as I am trying to do new things with my life, I'll be like, okay, this is enough. It's good enough, and because I always went back up and tried, and I retire on my terms. You know, I you know, one day I was like, okay, this is enough. Now I'm married, cannot keep going with this, and I decided to stop on my own terms. And now I have that experience. Now I know that whatever I want to pursue next in my life, I know it's gonna be hard. I know I'm gonna have setbacks. We gotta stand up again, keep going, and yeah, because I learned it from from those experiences.
And see, it's beautiful because, you know, we talked about how you initially thought, hey, what if my path was being like one of the tops in the world? And then it changed. And now you've retired from the ATP circuit and you're coaching and you're creating your own path right now. Even though you don't know what it looks like, you're creating it as you go. So what advice would you give your younger self?
My younger self. Wow. Deep question. I don't think I would do anything different, because at that moment I felt like that was the right decision, and I did it. So maybe I would tell him, I'll tell him, good one.
Yeah.
What would I tell him? You know what? I'll tell him, just do it again. Like, just do it. I would do everything again.
That's awesome.
Maybe I feel like maybe I stretch it a little bit too much. Like, after the 3 or 4 years of my professional tour, I had injuries, and you know, I started thinking like, you know, maybe it's time to stop, and then I would stop a little bit, and then my injuries would start feeling better, and then we'll get back. I would do it again after I already stopped like 1 year and a half. I would tell him, you know, if you decide something, stick with it.
Yeah.
Stick with it, because I retired like 2 times, and then came back. I would see my friends playing on TV, and I'll be like, oh, maybe I can be there again.
Sure.
And then I would pick up my racket again, like start training again. And so I think at that moment I didn't listen to my inner self. Like, I was a little disconnected from my inner self, and yeah, and then I would try to go again. Then I would have another injury. I would stop. So I think that's the advice. Like, make sure you are always in tune with your spirit. With your spirit. If when you don't, I'm gonna go more spiritual here. When you don't follow the commandments, I guess, and you do wrong things, you get disconnected with yourself, and then it's hard to know what you really, 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 really want.
Yeah.
So it makes it harder to make decisions, and that's why I was like, okay, I'm done. Then I would start again. Then I'm done. Then I would start again, and that was actually when I was able to connect again with my spirit. You know the story, and I felt like I was one again, and that's when I found my wife, and that's when I was finally. And I finally decided that it was time to stop, and I really stick with that. Yeah.
I love that, man. You know, I think that's a beautiful lesson. It's a powerful lesson, because we have all kinds of reasons for doing the things that aren't completely true to ourselves, our spirit. You experienced a little bit of FOMO, which is fear of missing out, right? You saw your friends playing, and you're like, wait, I've retired. My spirit was like, yeah, you should retire. But now it's like, well, but they're playing. Maybe I should go back and play. Or it's like the woulda, shoulda, coulda game, right? Like, I should have done this, or I would have done this, or I'm supposed to do this. But at the end of the day, when you listen to the spirit, your spirit, saying like, hey, this is really what you want, you know, then you can be at home with yourself. You can be happy. Instead of like chasing all these different things and kind of going down all these different paths and stuff, you can kind of be like, yeah, this feels good. So I appreciate that, man. That's really good advice, and it's great advice for me to even hear right now as I'm kind of creating my own path. So, but Sebastian, thank you so much for being on this podcast. I feel like you've given me a lot to think about, so I appreciate that. Any last words of advice?
Yeah, I think in my life I had to figure out a lot of things on my own. Like, my parents weren't really united. They never really get a divorce, but they were separated. So like I always had to figure things out on my own. So I didn't have the guidance. So I always tried, maybe this works, and so I think if there are parents there, I feel like that's maybe a message I wanna leave. It's so important to like support your kids and let them decide. They like teach them how to take decisions, to decide on their own. You kind of guide them, but at the end they decide, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I
love that, man. I love that, letting your having your parents support you, but then letting your kids decide. That's great. That's awesome. Well, Sebastian, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you taking the time and being on this podcast, and I'm excited for your life, man. I feel like you're on a really cool journey right now. I'm excited to witness it and maybe be a part of it in a little bit, but I'm really excited to see where you headed off to.
All right, man. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thanks again.
Thanks
Thank
for
you again.
having me.
Yep. Thanks so much for listening to the Lemonade Stand podcast, and we hope you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you use to be alerted when we release new episodes. We'd also love to hear your feedback in the reviews, and if you or someone you know has an awesome Lemonade Stand story, please reach out to us on social media and let us know. Thanks so much, and have a great day.